So we're gonna continue further discussion on Darwin versus Krishna. It's an odd combination, but there is a lot to learn, which I learned in Galapagos. We saw the beauty everywhere. We saw the life forms struggling to survive and thrive, depends upon whatever was they were able to adapt to, and adaptability was seen all over. Rather than survival of the fittest, there was no competition to survive, but whichever life form could adapt was the one that survived. And the adaptability is something that comes from within by the genetic alterations, but ultimate giver is based on our spirituality model is the consciousness that gives, is the ultimate giver in the universe or all across is the godliness or the consciousness, the Krishna consciousness, or whatever name you give. Lao Tse gives the name Tao. All these are basically the ultimate states. They all talk about one state, which is formless, which is shapeless, which is sizeless, no attribute, nirgun, nirakar. Has no shape, no gun, no characteristics. You cannot describe, and yet it does exist. So it is something that can be only experienced within, and is the ultimate giver of the whatever adaptabilities we have and whatever adaptabilities were required by each life form to survive. And the adaptability also came in a different forms, not just say like finches had a short beak versus the long beaks. It's not just that, but the adaptability was also among the life forms themselves. It's not that they were in competition with each other. Each one, for example, which I didn't talk about last time, we went to an island called Bartolome Island. It's a beautiful island. It's relatively new, had a volcanic activity recently. So it had a lot of volcanoes had exploded, and with beautiful color variations of the minerals that came out, and yellow and red and pink and orange, and very beautifully spread out like rangoli everywhere. And then there was lava form also. Lava had exploded and then had rolled over. And lava field is one of the toughest field to survive. And yet, when we reached there, we saw some life forms existing, trying to make a life out of that. One of them was they called the lava cactus. It's a cactus that when the lava is like folded, and in the groove in between, the tiny amount of water that was available, the lava cactus grows. And before you know, we saw some gray color plants which almost look like a dead plants in Bartolome Island. They're called taquilia, not tequila, taquilia. Taquilia are the life forms. They say they look dead, but under the microscope they have like silvery gray leaves and with thorns on them. So that's how they preserve the water. They don't let the water evaporate. Now these are the only life forms we saw. We saw a tiny lizard running around, trying to find a shelter because there is an extreme of heat, and then there is a 6 months of rain, and then there is no rain at all. So they have to learn how to adapt to all those kind of harsh environment. So before you know, the turtles will start walking into the marine iguanas will start walking in and try to eat these plants, and then turtles or tortoise rather, the land turtles or tortoise, they will start eating these cactuses because that's their favorite fruit. So this is how like the chain of life forms which are existing, they cooperate with each other. There is no survival of the fittest. Each one is trying to survive in their own, but they also help each other. For example, I saw the documentary after I came back from Galapagos. They say there were the marine iguanas, they go into the ocean and they eat the algae. They can stay underwater for 30 minutes. Normally iguanas are supposed to be land animals. They go in the water and they stay there. But along with them also comes a lot of parasites. Then I saw in a documentary that they have sallyfoot crabs. The crabs crawl on the body of the iguanas and they eat up all these parasites. So there is a mutual symbiotic relationship. It's not that they're fighting against each other or anything like that. Same thing we saw the tiny lizards. Tiny lizards, they walk, they stay on the bodies of these iguanas, giant marine iguanas, and any flies, because marine iguanas would rather be in the water because there are no flies, but there are nasty flies in certain islands. They are continuously bothering the iguanas. But so these tiny lizards remained tiny so that they can stay on top of the marine iguanas and eat up those flies. So it helps. So it's a mutual symbiosis. So life forms are supposed to cooperate. So what happened? When the humans came, what happened? So, like I said, the animals know they do exist, but they don't know that they exist. For them, life is not an event that they have to really work hard to preserve. But the consciousness raised itself to a higher level in the humans. So now the humans started realizing that they do exist. So their existence became a real thing for them. Once you know you exist, you want to preserve it. So once the preserving the existence became the life, and absence of this existence became the death. Until then, the life and death was not really meaningful to these animals. They had natural instincts to survive so that they can carry on their lineage and leave the eggs and their babies and all that. But other than that, they did not really have to preserve their ownership of the life and all that until the humans came into existence and the humans started having. So basically the ego was in a very rudimentary state in the animals, but it really flourished big time in the humans. So like Vijay Bhai said, the consciousness, our true nature is the consciousness. But when it identifies with a small form, the ego is built up. And the ego is the cause of all the role playing that we do. And we do need the role playing, but at the same time, there are consequences of the ego also. And those are the sufferings. Like I always say, when you play Monopoly as a kid, and then when you win, it was a real win. And when you lost, it was a real loss. $10,000 was a real gain. And going to the jail card was really a big suffering. But now you grow up and you go back and play the same game with your grandchildren. He said it's only a game. So the level at which your identification was of that fake dollar bills. But now you have a real dollar bills, so now it becomes a game because you know that there is some other reality. So the spiritual development ultimately is possible only if we try to analyze our ego, our identifications, and this journey is something you don't have to take. You can live your whole life as part of the ego and suffer and die, there is no problem. But like I said, the ego is a reflection. It's an end result of a misidentification, but it's not the reality. Real moon is real moon, but when you see the reflection of it on a pond and you get excited, you say, okay, this is it, and you are happy with it, you're not getting the real moon. The real moon is something else. For that, you have to go within. So the life forms that had existed in the Galapagos, I saw them working hard for their daily life. Not a single animal life form was sitting quietly. Everyone was continuously looking for food, continues to really struggle in life and adapt and everything. There was a continuous action going on. So where does the Krishna fit into all these things? Krishna tells you to go back to that state, but in a transcending the ego state. Not because ego is a byproduct of the consciousness that is being developed over the period of years. Compare the presence of ego on an amoeba, for example, single cell organisms, all the way to the monkeys. It has been evolving, but now it has evolved to such a level that for the first time we are recognizing that we do exist. And that itself is an evolution of the consciousness. Consciousness is trying to express itself through the various mechanisms, and in that race of the consciousness, the life forms that it has been using are becoming more and more complex. Compare ourselves with amoeba or cockroach or a fruit fly. Simple organisms, comparing them to us We have a very complex life forms. We have sense organs. We have a mind to really alienate which we are getting, and we are analyzing. All this very complex system exists in our body. And then we are also able to fold our consciousness back to itself. That is the next step of evolution. So most of the people, they say, well, yeah, the ego is an illusion, there is no question about that, but ego is necessary. Yes, the roles are necessary and all that, but there is a life beyond that also. And that is possible only if you go within and remain in the state of awareness. The state of awareness is where the awareness itself is aware of awareness itself as an independent entity, which is the original mother of all the progenitors, which is really existing. So the egos are millions of different egos. And why egos are there? Because that makes the whole play very complex. Spicy. And through which the ultimately the expression of consciousness is possible, which was not possible in the life forms, that in the lower life forms, which was not possible. So consciousness is multiplying itself and playing with the material that is available, the matter. It's continuously being arranged and rearranged and rearranged and rearranged. And this was known to our rishis thousands of years ago. So when Darwin stated the theory of evolution, it was nothing new from the spiritual point of view. But the fact that the consciousness was even at a much higher level than the evolution that seems to be happening at the material level, which was only a baby step compared to what the Krishna had gave us the message of the Karmavad. In the Karmavad, they have inaction, there is action, there is inaction, and there is unaction. So, because one guy asked Osho a question that, what if you think that this is all fake, the ego is fake, and then all that actions and doership are meaningless, why should I act? What is the purpose? So, Osho gives a beautiful answer. He says that you have ego and you deciding whether to act or not. Whether you act or not act, your ego is still alive. So whether you are doing action which is oriented towards the personal gain, because ego always wants something in return for itself. So when you do that, you're doing the action. So the action is coming out of your ego. But when you choose not to act, that's who is telling you that? That also is ego. So the action will never stop at the karma level, at the sthita prajna state, in a higher state of consciousness. Action will never stop because the consciousness will still work through you. So the same thing you see in Galapagos, you don't see any animal sitting quietly. So Osho explained that, have you ever seen birds sitting in their nest and say, okay, I don't feel like going anywhere today? It's a continuous action that always takes place. So when you're really in that mode of the higher state of consciousness, creation will become part of you. Because like Vijay said, that we're removing our identification, or you cannot remove it, but you can understand it. That's where the wisdom comes in. That's where the Gudarth comes in. That's where you understand the meaning of the whole thing that is happening in front of you. And that's where it's like if you see a poetry, somebody who is very learned, a poet, or even somebody like us that we have aptitude for poetry, you read the whole poetry, you get the meaning of it. But if you give the same poetry to read to a second grader or third grader, he says, A, B, C, oh, Dad, this is land. Yes, he's not wrong, but he's not right enough, because there is much more to get out of that poetry. So the life is a poetry. Every single component is important. Ego was important until as long as we needed it. Ego has to protect itself because we are not just protecting only our physical structure, but we are also protecting our ideas, our beliefs, our thoughts. And look at the multitude, infinite possibilities of different ideas and different thoughts and different beliefs come up in an individual shell of a human being. At physical level, we may be a little bit different, but at mind level, we are so different. And that differentiation itself is a gift of the infinite possibilities coming out of the consciousness. So when the thoughts fight, is childishness. Each thought has importance of its own, in its own way. Who knows which thought will go further on the race of evolution and will become adaptable to reach to the higher state. So thoughts have to be appreciated. The desires, individual people have different desires. Think of the Einstein. If he had never thought, he had never done those thought experiments, we were living in the dark ages before the Einstein came up with this theory of relativity. It's so fascinating. Same thing Darwin. If Darwin did not even have a thought about how the species are being rearranged, there has to be some pattern on it. And he lived in mid 1800s when religion was everything. Religion said, this is it. God created the world in 6 days and he rested on the 7th day. So we were living in the dark ages. Thoughts are very powerful. But when the thoughts are ego-oriented, they are self-fulfilling. But that happens only if your identification is wrong. If your identification is stuck on a small scale of your physical body structure, that is somebodyness, really does not do anything to change the world. So even your desire to change the world itself can be part of your ego, but that's not what it is. When you go into meditation, you don't have any objectives. You don't have any set agenda. You just go with totally blank mind. And when the mind becomes totally blank, when all the thoughts disappear, don't think the thoughts will disappear. Thoughts will come on its own from a state of consciousness, the ultimate, which is the progenitor of everything. So at the level of consciousness, the consciousness remains sthita prajna. It's really unbiased state where no single life form is more appealing to the consciousness than the other. Whatever is required for that life form to exist is given. It's given every single chance until that feature does not remain compatible with that environment, that life form perishes, no problem. But the ultimate giver is the consciousness. So consider yourself in life and you reach to that state of consciousness, sthita prajna state, where your every single level of identification, because first you identified yourself with the body, and most of the people are born, they live and die with the body identifications. They never really reach to the higher level. But then they go to the mind, your thoughts, your ideas and everything. So that's your manomaya kosh, you're advancing yourself to. And then you go into the higher forms, the Vishuddha chakra. Every chakra gets activated, you rising yourself to the higher and higher and higher level. And that highest level is possible where in a samadhi state where there are no identification except you just exist. At that level, the divinity comes within you. It expresses itself, which is featureless, because there are no identifications left anymore. So there is nothing to protect anymore. So there is no selfish motives anymore. So there are all the negativities which are attached to the ego. You remain above, you transcend all of them. And at that level, the divinity expresses itself. He's the ultimate healer. The suffering does exist because of the ego. But if you can realize that this is the role playing and you remain your identification, you keep your identification at much higher level all the time, then you can be a true giver. The giving automatically happens because you have become infinite. Because now you have no identification other than with the universal consciousness. The consciousness does not sit quietly. Consciousness creates all the time. All different life forms, not just here, not just one earth. There are millions of solar systems and millions of universes. Like Krishna says, I am the owner of crores of universes. Everything, that's me. So you reach to a much higher level and the action does not disappear. At that time it becomes unaction, where the actor is absent. The action will still happen. And in the creativity mode, you are utilizing everything around you as the time, the resources, but you utilize everything to spread the message of consciousness. You are not gonna downplay your employee. You're gonna raise them to a higher level, respecting at the same level, because each life form is a creation of Krishna, consciousness. Krishna says, whoever sees me in everywhere and everything in me, I'm close to them all the time and they are close to me all the time. And if that happens, your yoga and kshema is taken care of by me. Yoga and kshema. Yoga is everything that you do the efforts to connect with. Yoga is something that you connect with. Huge means to connect. And yes, we are living in a daily life. We have to connect with different, including money, including house, including spouse, including children, friends. Everywhere we have to connect because we are part of playing the role. But the connection itself requires efforts, time and resources. Everything is needed. We work hard. And yes, we need to get paid at the role level. But little by little, with the higher level of consciousness, you start realizing this is the role playing. So the yoga is something that you want to connect with. And kshema is once you believe that you own something, all the sufferings that you have to do because of that. Even connecting to a delicacies or sudden alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or anything, your fame or recognitions and whatever you connect with, including your body. I mean, you're connected to your beauty or your handsomeness or whatever. You are connecting. That's once you connect, you want to preserve. Once you reach to certain higher level to maintain your position, you have to dress up in certain way, otherwise nobody cares about you. So those are the things yoga and kshema are continuously revolving around. So only when you start seeing Krishna consciousness in everywhere, then you are rising higher in an evolutionary way. So all this evolution is understood and experienced ultimately. And that can happen only by applying wisdom to your day-to-day life and realize the ability to discriminate, the Vivek Buddhi, which can differentiate what is right and what is wrong. When you realize the ego is fake, but it will not happen until you actually have experienced the reality. Until then, ego is gonna remain real. But the reality, when it's actually experienced within you, now you see the difference. Now a blackboard has suddenly shown up within you on which these white letters are written. When you put a dot on a blackboard and you ask the students what's there, they say, oh, there is a white dot there. Nobody talks about the huge blackboard there. So all our actions, all our thoughts, all our ego playings and role playings and all this thing is happening in a vast arena of infinite dimensional consciousness. Consciousness is everywhere. The awareness which is continuously being aware of all the actions which are happening. That's the only way it can manipulate it to rise higher and higher. It's like Vijay always give an example that you are the factory owner. You don't do anything, but you observe everybody, whoever is fit for what position. You utilize them and ultimately raise the whole level of the factory to that level. So an individual person is important. At the same time, the final common goal of vision to raise the factory to the higher level is important. But all these things will happen only if you find your true identity. The real identity is the infinite consciousness. So it's not a total waste, because a lot of times they say, like we may feel that the ego that we have developed, it seems to be counterproductive because we're destroying each other. We are really fighting against each other about my religion and your religion, my thoughts and your thoughts, and we are wasting our time. What did the evolution did for us? By giving us the ego, seems like it kind of created a setback for us in our progress. But no, time to time, there's gonna be people like Krishna or Jesus or Buddha. They're gonna come and show you the way that no, the higher way is still possible. So this is only a step into the higher. Once you suffer, that suffering has to start becoming real for you. Until that suffering becomes the real for you, you will not try to go anything higher. So when the monkeys were walking on the four legs, some monkeys decided to walk on two, and the people must have laughed at them. But at some point, they develop into human beings. Same way the fish, which was swimming in the ocean, decided to get away from the ocean and start walking on the land. It started developing the very rudimentary legs, so their fins became the legs, and eventually they got out of the ocean. They were the first organisms that created all the landforms. So every single person has a potential left within themselves to start a whole new chain. Because kshan kshan mein or kan kan mein, in every single atom he exists. You have the same potential as Buddha or Mahavir or Krishna. I meditate right in the woods, so I picked up a honeysuckle from the jungle. It was just growing, right? So I picked up a few plants and I just planted them, and suddenly out of one small twig that I had cut had nodes like every foot or something like that. So I put the node in that. It just was so mesmerizing to see that, and now from a single node a whole bunch of honeysuckle has grown. So that means that tiny node was holding on to that potential to become something really big, and not something big, but with millions of nodes in it that can even perpetually go even further, make honeysuckles all throughout the Park Ridge and all over the world. Potential is there. So every single, do not neglect yourself, go within. And the evolutionary path, we can be the harbingers. Buddha has shown the path, Mahavir has shown the path, Krishna has shown the path. It's up to us to take the path. So don't get lost at the ego level. Find out your higher true potential, and then the fulfillment of Krishna recommendation, all these things can happen. All right, so much for today.